The blonde bombshell mocked Dakota Ditcheva's fighting style, dismissing her as raw, one-dimensional, and untested. Shauna "Mama B" Bannon, the undefeated strawweight from Dublin Iron, had the confidence of a woman who believed she was destined for gold. She was polished, powerful, and unafraid to speak her mind. When she laughed at Dakota's calm composure, calling her technique amateurish, no one expected the quiet teenager from Manchester to respond with violence so poetic it would echo through the halls of British MMA. Bannon had been unstoppable, a submission artist with a cruel streak, a champion with swagger and charisma. Her rise had been nothing short of meteoric, and when she declared it was her time for the championship, few dared to doubt her. But what unfolded that night was a reminder that fighting is an art form only when practiced by those willing to suffer for it. The crowd was electric inside the packed English arena, anticipation building as the amateur women's flyweight title bout was announced. In the red corner stood Shauna Bannon, the blonde Dublin storm, known for her sidekick-heavy karate style and venomous confidence. Across from her, in the blue corner, was a teenager who barely spoke during the pre-fight interviews. Dakota Ditcheva simply smiled, adjusted her gloves, and stared straight ahead. The contrast was striking. One was flash and flare, the other pure focus. When the bell rang, Bannon came out aggressively, flicking sidekicks and spinning heel kicks that whistled through the air. Her movement was sharp, her energy high, the rhythm of a striker in her element. But the woman she was mocking, the one she'd called inexperienced, was waiting to catch her mistakes. Dakota had spent years in Thailand, where she learned the language of violence through repetition and sweat. Every punch, every knee, every kick was drilled into perfection. She wasn't there to talk. She was there to make the cage her canvas. The opening minutes were chaos. Both exchanged bombs, and for a moment it seemed Bannon's striking variety might overwhelm the young Mancunian. But then Dakota found her rhythm. She slipped a jab, fired a knee to the body, and followed with a right hand that landed flush. The sound echoed like a bat striking a tree. The crowd gasped. Bannon stumbled, caught herself, and immediately shot for a takedown. But Dakota's balance was impeccable. She stuffed the attempt, turned her hips, and delivered a short elbow on the break that left a mark. The bell saved Bannon from being finished in the first round. At the restart, Dakota adjusted her stance, low and measured, chopping at Bannon's legs with calculated precision. Every strike was a message. She targeted the Irish fighter's knees, slowly breaking down the very footwork that gave her mobility. When Bannon tried to close the distance, Dakota welcomed the clinch, reversing the position with ease and framing perfectly to unleash a barrage of knees. The Dublin crowd favorite was suddenly the one retreating, forced to hold on, forced to survive. Dakota's power was becoming undeniable. By the third round, the tone had shifted. The fight no longer looked even. Dakota was in complete control, blending striking and wrestling seamlessly. She bullied Bannon against the cage, transitioned from knees to body shots, and then dragged her to the mat with raw strength. The grappler from Dublin found herself being out-grappled. Every time she tried to create space, Dakota punished her with ground and pound. The teenager's dominance was growing with every exchange, and the once rowdy crowd began to murmur in disbelief. Still, Bannon refused to fold. In the fourth round, she came out swinging, reverting to her taekwondo roots with spinning kicks and flashy techniques. One spinning heel kick missed Dakota's chin by inches, a reminder that Bannon's danger never truly disappeared. But as soon as the distance closed, Dakota's power returned to the forefront. She shoved Bannon against the fence, controlled her posture, and began tearing at her with short hooks and knees to the ribs. Each strike carried intention, each breath was measured. This wasn't just a youth-defeating experience, it was composure-breaking chaos. By the fifth and final round, both fighters were battered but unbroken. They met in the center with mutual respect but burning ambition. Dakota opened with knees from the Thai clinch, slamming them into Bannon's midsection like pistons. Bannon tried to counter, but her body betrayed her. She was running on instinct. Another knee landed clean, and she crumpled for a moment before grabbing Dakota's waist to survive. The crowd erupted. Dakota pressed forward, relentless. When the final bell rang, Bannon's face was swollen, her body bruised, but her pride intact. Both women raised their hands, but only one had truly dominated. The judge's decision was unanimous. Dakota Ditcheva was crowned the UKFC Flyweight champion, the first title of her young MMA career. The celebration was pure emotion. Dakota fell to her knees, tears mixing with sweat as her mother embraced her through the cage. Years of unseen work had crystallized into a moment of triumph. That victory symbolized the rise of a new British star, a girl who had been underestimated and mocked and yet had dismantled one of the most dangerous prospects in the sport. Shauna Bannon, humbled but not broken, used that defeat as fuel. She rebuilt herself, adding layers of complexity to her striking and wrestling. Over the next several years, she would go on a 10-fight win streak, silencing doubters and proving her place among the elite. Her eventual move to the UFC marked the beginning of a second chapter, one defined by resilience. She became known not just for her beauty or bravado but for her grit, her ability to endure and evolve. With a record of 7 wins and 1 loss, Bannon's ceiling in the sport remains a mystery, her potential still immense. For Dakota, however, that night was only the beginning. Having conquered the amateur ranks, she turned her gaze to the professional world. Her transition was seamless, her skill set sharper, and her mentality colder. In her debut, she faced Leonora Silvia, an experienced striker who believed she could bully the newcomer. But Dakota's composure told a different story. She dismantled Silvia with surgical precision, landing strikes from all angles, dominating both the stand-up and the grappling exchanges. It was a statement. The amateur prodigy was now a professional menace. The crowd roared as the referee stepped in to stop the bout. Dakota had arrived. Her next challenge came quickly, and it was personal. Across the cage stood Levi Steedman, a wrestler from Manchester with dangerous submissions and a chip on her shoulder. Both women represented the same city and the same fighting pride, and that made it more than just another match. It was a rivalry. Steedman had experience, a record of 2 wins and 2 losses, and she vowed to humble the fast-rising Ditcheva. The tension was thick as they stood face-to-face before the opening bell. When the fight began, Dakota wasted no time. She launched a big right hand that narrowly missed but followed up immediately with a knee to the body that landed with a thud. The sound echoed through the venue. Steedman tried to press forward, but Dakota's clinch was vicious. She dug knees into her opponent's ribs, controlling the head, the posture, and the tempo. It was pure Muay Thai brutality inside an MMA cage. Steedman's attempts to change levels were stifled by Dakota's underhooks and balance. Every escape was met with punishment. By the end of the first round, Steedman was breathing heavily, but Dakota's expression hadn't changed. She was methodical, patient, and terrifyingly composed. In the second round, Steedman adjusted, shooting in with a double-leg takedown that briefly lifted Dakota off the canvas. For a moment, it looked like the tide might turn. But as soon as they hit the mat, Dakota's hips shifted. She fought for frames, escaped, and reversed position. When they returned to the feet, she unleashed a barrage of knees to the body, forcing Steedman to backpedal. As the fight wore on, Dakota's striking looked effortless. Every jab was followed by a right cross, every knee by a hook. She wasn't just fighting, she was painting a masterpiece of violence. Steedman's toughness was the only thing keeping her in the contest. Heading into the final round, both women exchanged nods, silently agreeing to settle it with heart. They met in the center and began trading. Steedman landed a few solid punches, but Dakota's counters were devastating. A crisp right hand sent Steedman stumbling backward. Dakota followed with a flying knee that grazed her opponent's chin, then connected with a short combination that forced the wrestler to clinch for survival. The crowd was on its feet, sensing the end. As the seconds ticked away, Dakota transitioned from striking to grappling seamlessly, locking in a guillotine choke that nearly ended the fight. Steedman survived only because the bell intervened. When the decision was read, there was no doubt. Dakota Ditcheva had won by unanimous decision, her second straight victory, solidifying her status as the most dangerous prospect in British women's MMA. She had shown not only power but also resilience, composure under fire, and an evolving ground game that hinted at greatness. From that moment, Dakota's rise accelerated. Each fight became a new showcase of precision and dominance. She dispatched her next opponents with frightening efficiency, delivering spinning elbows, knees, and calculated combinations that left commentators in awe. Her transitions on the ground grew smoother, her awareness sharper. Every opponent that stood across from her walked in confident and left broken. Her highlight reels spread across social media, and fans began to call her one of the most complete strikers in the world. She wasn't a talker, she didn't need to be. Dakota let her fists speak for her. Her composure outside the cage mirrored her control within it. Reporters asked about the trash talkers, about those who once mocked her inexperience. She simply smiled and said she was focused on the next challenge. Eventually, her performances earned her a place in Europe's biggest promotion, the Professional Fighters League. It was the natural evolution of a fighter born to compete. Facing the continent's top athletes, Dakota continued to prove that her skill set translated at every level. Her Muay Thai foundation, her wrestling defense, her striking precision, all of it combined into a symphony of controlled violence. Every fight was another chapter, another lesson, another step toward immortality. Meanwhile, Shauna Bannon had reinvented herself in the UFC, blending her creative striking with newfound composure and wrestling ability. Her victories were decisive, her style refined. The woman who once underestimated Dakota had become one of the promotion's rising stars. Yet the shadow of their first encounter lingered in the minds of fans. Could the outcome be different today? Could Bannon's evolution bridge the gap that once separated them? And what of Levi Steedman, the Manchester grappler who endured Dakota's storm and lived to tell the tale? She, too, had grown as a fighter, sharpening her skills and adding layers to her ground game. Her toughness that night became her trademark, her willingness to absorb and adapt defining her career. The new generation of female fighters in Britain all pointed to that era, that trilogy of rising names, as the spark that ignited a movement. For Dakota Ditcheva, the journey from underestimated teenager to world-class champion was defined by discipline. Every knee, every punch, every hour on the mats in Manchester and Thailand shaped her into something rare, a fighter without pretense, one who found art in efficiency. She didn't need chaos to thrive, she was the calm inside it. Her style was built on intelligence, precision, and timing. Looking back, that night against Shauna Bannon feels like destiny. It was more than a fight, it was a prophecy fulfilled. The young girl who blew a kiss before the bell had announced herself to the world with violence that was both elegant and ruthless. Years later, as she continues to dominate, fans remember the moment it all began, the smirk of a confident Irish woman and the silent fury of a teenager who refused to be mocked. Dakota Ditcheva's legacy is still being written, but one truth is undeniable. She has become the embodiment of evolution in women's MMA. From Muay Thai prodigy to professional champion, from quiet contender to global star, she represents everything the sport strives to be: technical, disciplined, and endlessly thrilling. As for her rivals, Shauna Bannon remains a force within the UFC, her ambitions undimmed, her talent undeniable. Levi Steedman continues to grind in the shadows, her toughness and grappling prowess earning respect across the circuit. Each woman has carved her path, but all are bound by those early wars, the moments that tested them, broke them, and ultimately made them who they are. If they were to meet again today, it would be a clash not just of fighters but of philosophies. Dakota's mastery of striking against Bannon's newfound versatility, Steedman's grappling grit against Dakota's evolved ground control. The possibilities ignite the imagination of every fight fan. Could Bannon's experience close the distance? Could Steedman's wrestling neutralize Dakota's power? Or would the Manchester Storm once again reign supreme, her precision slicing through every defense like a scalpel through silk? For now, those questions remain unanswered. What is certain is that Dakota Ditcheva has already etched her name into the story of modern combat sports. Her path from teenage prospect to champion, her calm amidst chaos, and her refusal to engage in mind games have made her a symbol of professionalism in a world often defined by noise. She doesn't boast. She doesn't mock. She delivers. And every time she steps into the cage, the crowd remembers that night in England, the night a blonde Dublin monster met a quiet teenager with the heart of a lioness, and greatness announced itself not with words, but with fists, knees, and the sound of destiny fulfilled.